Hey guys, welcome to the Live Big, Find Your Magic podcast. I have my friend Karen here all the way across, the country, in another country, 4 hours away in New Brunswick. And I am so excited to speak to her today. She is a fellow nurse. And we've been connected for a few years now in my community. And I just love Karen because Karen is always there. And she's a great support for me in my business as a friend. You know, we've gotten to know each other from all the way across, through social media. And I was so excited to have her on this podcast to share her story because I love the fact that she's a nurse and she's done something with that and it's totally outside the box. So all my nurse friends, pay attention to hear the story because I like to inspire that, especially that group of people, because a lot of nurses think that they can only do one thing and are only supposed to be doing one thing. And, years later, they end up not super happy with that one thing. So Karen's a perfect example of thinking outside the box. And I can't wait to share her story. Thank you, Karen, for being here on the podcast.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. It's great.
Great. Awesome. Okay. So we're going to start off with a few questions, 3 questions. They're going to be really easy to answer. And there is no wrong answer. Okay. Okay. Again, no wrong answer. All right. So the first question is, do you believe that everyone has a purpose in life? No wrong answer.
Yeah, I do. And I don't think it always has to be something really grand or huge but I think that everyone can have an impact on everybody. It really could be any little thing, just a small gesture, a wave hello, or it could be something really big, like maybe in the work that you do, maybe, you really impact and inspire people, and you find your purpose that way. I used to say that I thought it was a gift if you found your purpose, because I don't think everybody does find it. And I think it's probably a little bit because sometimes, in my own experience, we don't always listen to the little voices, the little intuitions that are telling us, little messages that are telling us and kind of, I feel, guiding us.
Right.
And if we don't listen to those little voices, then we might end up not really finding our true purpose. But I do feel like everyone can have an impact on everyone.
Yeah.
And in that there's some purpose.
Yeah. I love that. And the inspiration there is to listen to the little voices, right? For those that feel like they don't have a purpose or don't know what their purpose is, start to listen, right?
Yeah. And you may be fortunate enough to find your purpose.
Yeah.
And I remember saying that to one of my, entrepreneurial friends, we're kind of lucky because we found ours.
Right.
But not everybody does.
Right.
And you might end up spending a lot of years really unhappy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. And, I think also to add to that is that for myself, 10 years ago, I would have said this was my purpose. And then, as years go by, I go, no, this is my purpose. Oh, no, this is my purpose. And there is no, wrong purpose. Like that was the purpose at the time. So yeah. I think listening to those voices, right? And not feeling like this is the one and only purpose you have is it kind of opens things up to where,
true,
we start to look at things. So I love that you said that the whole, paying attention to the little voices in your head, that was really stuck out to me because that's what's driven me to each new purpose. It's just listening to what I'm supposed to be doing. Okay, this sounds right. This feels right. Okay, I'm going to do this. I don't know if this is right, but I'm going to listen and do
Yeah,
it. So
it's kind of risky because it goes
right,
against our natural makeup. It goes against our ego
for
that's
sure.
always trying to keep us safe, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And kind of like in the well, I'll say negative side, but
Yeah.
we tend not to go against the grain kind of
Right.
thing because it's a little risky.
Right.
And our bodies typically don't want us to go to that risky thing. They're trying to protect us. So
Right.
that's, I think, why it gets squashed so much.
Yeah. We like things to be easy and comfortable and,
Yeah.
but at the same time, the easy and comfortable doesn't always make us happy. Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Okay. That was great. See, it was easy question.
Ding, ding, ding.
Okay. And now the
What do I win for that?
Ready for the next one. All right, here we go. What brings you, okay, this is a general question, but I'm gonna narrow it down a little bit.
Mhm.
What brings you joy? And then I'm gonna narrow it down and say what brought you joy this week? Because we're
Right.
speaking at the end of the week. What brought you joy this week? If you could name one thing that brought you joy.
It sounds kind of funny, but for me, it's just little things. Like this week, we've had some heavy snow,
Mhm.
and I've always lived in Canada. I did spend some time in the States too, where it was much warmer. But I do accept that I live in a community in a country with 4 seasons. And this week we had a really heavy snowfall, and I was heading out for my morning walk, and I don't normally bring my phone just so I have some distance and a break from the screen and
Mhm.
all that comes with carrying your phone.
Right.
It's sort of my time. But this time I took my phone, and I was so glad that I did, because the snow on the trees, and it was just magical. Like it was
Right.
just so magical. So I was going through the neighborhood with my dog walking, and I'm like stopping and I'm yanking on the dog, like, hang on, we need to take a picture. But I was just so
Aw.
taken by how beautiful it was. And I
Right.
think sometimes we spend so much time in these snowy climates complaining about the snow and how awful it is and how cold it is.
Yeah.
But it was actually really beautiful. And yeah, it was just amazing, like the pictures that I took.
Yeah,
They
I
were
love
so
that too.
pretty.
And the fact that you live there. I mean, it's there, it's always there. But
Yeah.
the fact that you took a step back and said, wow, I need to take a picture of this. I love that. I love that.
Yeah. For me, it's just the little things. Like
Mhm.
I try, just to focus on like the little things that bring me joy. Maybe it could be like a new flavored coffee.
Yep.
It could be, like meeting a new friend or connecting with somebody new, or somebody that I haven't seen in a long time that I've connected with. So joyful things don't always have to be huge things.
Right.
I'm a firm believer that it's more like a cumulative effect.
Oh
It's
yeah.
kind of like
Yeah.
with gratitude too. It's like
Right.
all the little things that
Yep.
you can do, all the little things you can acknowledge. And that's the same with joy too. It's just all those little things that kind of add up and have a really big impact.
Yeah. I love
So
that.
yeah, for me this week, I'd have to say just how beautiful it was,
Yeah.
and that everyone was actually really kind of acknowledging that, because of course there was just a flood of pictures on social media, because it doesn't always look like that
Oh, I
when
see.
it
Yeah.
snows here.
Mhm.
Sometimes, like it rarely looks like that pretty with the snow resting on everything, glistening, and then the sun coming up. It was
Right.
gorgeous.
Yeah. Oh,
I'll send you a
oh,
picture.
I love that. Yes. I mean, I experienced, of course, I'm from Southern California, but I experienced something similar last week. I was in New Hampshire, and when the
Yeah.
sun came out, and it's just, I don't get to see that very often. And
Yeah.
we all just had to take a step back at how beautiful it was. And I mean, I took 1,000 pictures because I'm not used to seeing that. And it was joyful, and makes you appreciate things, and just nature itself, and the seasons, which we don't get here.
Right.
So, okay. So one more question, and then
Right.
we're going to dig into your story and let you share with the audience. Okay. So this question is can be a little bit tricky, but again, no wrong answer. What is your favorite thing about human connection? It can be anything.
I don't know. I think it's just the opportunity that it can bring.
Okay. Yeah.
And in so many different ways, like it could be like connecting with someone the way we've been connecting the last couple of years has been the only thing that's really kind of kept us together, right? I remember saying on LinkedIn one day, like, that this has kind of replaced networking, hasn't it? Like, because we're kind of missing that human connection of, remember when we used to go to networking events and we would talk about what we do, and maybe there was an educational component, and that just all kind of went away the last couple of years. And I was thinking, like, LinkedIn really kind of brought us together in that networking kind of ability. And I have found so much opportunity there for collaboration. So so a lot of people that I've met, you call them your social media friends.
Right.
And because we've connected purposefully and intentionally on social media, it's led to some kind of collaboration. And in some cases, for me, it's actually kind of led to some consultant work and paid work for me. Right. So it's a lot more than just saying, hey, we kind of work in the same space, and how are you? And how do you do what you do? Yeah. It's led to some really amazing opportunities too. So there's sort of that component of it where there's opportunity for collaborations and stuff. And then the connection, like how I met you, like in the group, you just see so much kindness and caring and community. And so that's, I guess, what I've always loved about what the group was able to produce, and I have you to thank for that, is just this real sense of community and kindness, and people that actually really care about each other.
Yeah, you have a wonderful community. Yeah.
How could I not want to be a part of that? So I just, I've always been a natural connector, personally and professionally. And so it just kind of comes a little bit naturally to me, this connection, like I really crave connection. So I guess it's kind of no surprise that I've kind of threaded that through my work.
Yeah, I know. That's why it's not the reason why I asked that question is clearly because those that are on this podcast have come to in my life because of human connection. So I love it so much that I always like to hear others takes on what human connection is to them. And I love the fact that you said, opportunities. There's so many opportunities in that human connection. I'm going to give one small example that happened to me yesterday. It actually didn't happen to me, but I watched it happen. I was at Disneyland, and they were filming for the Super Bowl. And we were standing around the set waiting for them to start filming. And there was a woman standing next to me, and she was talking to some of the employees that worked for ESPN, and they clearly knew each other. And to the left of us were these three young women who were college students or had just graduated from college. And I could see them watching this conversation. And of course, my friend and I were listening to this conversation, and it was fascinating. And clearly they had worked together before. And this woman was someone with ESPN, but had moved positions. And she says her goodbyes. She walks away. And one of the young girls goes, I have to go talk to her. I have to go talk to her. I don't know who she is, but I have to go talk to her. And there were two nurses. We said, go girl, shoot your shot. And she went over there and had this wonderful connection with this very high up exec. And we were so proud of her, but it was that human connection because she was watching this conversation happen, and she knew that she needed to be there. She didn't know why. And she, this young 20-year-old, went right up to this woman and had this amazing conversation. She came back to us and she got all of her contact information and the opportunity to move forward in her career, all because of watching and paying attention to this conversation that was happening in front of her, that she knew that there was some sort of connection that she needed to make. So the opportunity, so when you said opportunity, that's the first thing that came to my mind, was that experience. And you know, Matt, it was so exciting to watch her do this. And then I felt bad for the other two girls who didn't. And I was like, that girl is going somewhere. That girl is going somewhere because she's not afraid to create new human connections, because she knows that the opportunity is there. So I love the fact that you said opportunity, because that was,
well, it's kind of and I know you read and listen to Brene Brown. It's kind of that same thing about sort of being this brave leader and being pretty bold and stepping into the arena, as she often says. So yeah, it's like you kind of have to step up sometimes, even though it can be uncomfortable.
yeah.
And yeah, I think that's where a lot of opportunity lies, not just necessarily for business growth and connection and collaboration, but that's a huge plus. But then there's the personal connection too. And it really kind of brings you both down, where you're just having a conversation, because we're both just human beings that are craving the same thing, right?
Exactly.
Even though she sounds like, you know, she was a high level executive, like in that moment and maybe in that conversation, you know, sometimes there's this common ground.
Yep.
And I find that so much with the people that I connect with, is that sometimes it's this common ground, like maybe we're both nurses, or maybe we're both in the caregiving space, or, you know, maybe we're both small business owners, and that's sort of what brought us together. But then it's sort of like when you get deeper into some of these conversations, and you know, you realize you're connected sometimes in more ways than you thought.
Yes.
So,
yes.
but yeah, it kind of means being a little bold and putting yourself out there.
Yeah, but it's an amazing thing, right? These opportunities and
sounds like she did it.
things we get to do and see and be a part of all start there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you passed the 3-question test.
Jeopardy.
Right? I appreciate you going through that, because it really kind of starts off your story, and I just love to dig in, and I love to ask questions, because I love to hear what people have to say. So thank you for indulging me in those answers.
No problem at all.
Okay, so what I would love for you to do is I would love for you to share with the audience a little bit about your past, and really how you find magic in your day-to-day, and how you have found the magic and the joy in your life to bring you where you are today. So I would love for you to share your story, and really just kind of inspire people that may connect with your story, and may connect with your struggles, or your, you know, the other side of that. So please share.
Please share.
Please share.
Yeah. And I mean, who would know where we're supposed to start? Because, you know, really, where does our story start, right? Like I really don't know like where that turning point was for me. Certainly as a nurse, you know, I worked all across the board, kind of always, I find all of our nursing friends out there will know we're always trying to sort of find our niche. Like in life, we're trying to find where we belong, and in our work as nurses, and probably no different than other occupations too, you're always kind of trying to find like where you fit in the best, right? Like where your skills and where you're really passionate about it, right? And so no surprise, like everybody else, I was out there doing the same thing. And that's what took me down to South Texas and Florida to work down there for a couple of years with a couple of friends. And we had a great time and met all kinds of nurses from across the country and whatnot. But like I said it maybe a minute ago or a few minutes ago about kind of being guided to your purpose. And I think that's what's happening all of our life. You know, I'm not a religious person, but I am a spiritual one. And I do believe that we are guided through life to find our purpose. And as I said, some of us are lucky enough to get there. Yeah, finally started working in the community, seeing people at home. And I really loved that. And the thing I really loved about seeing people at home too was I got to meet their family that helped to care for them at home. And I didn't know then that I'd be doing what I'm doing now, but I think, you know, I was kind of meant to be there. And I loved working outside of the hospital system. You know, there's a time and a place for every nurse, and everyone is needed. I know there's this campaign that's going on in New Brunswick, and it's like, who needs a nurse? Everyone needs a nurse. Because there's so many issues we know in our industry right now. But it was then when I was working and seeing family members and how they were struggling that I really was passionate about doing that kind of work. The unfortunate thing, I guess, is that I was kind of working at a soul-crushing job. I heard that term last week, and I thought, oh, I love that.
It was very fitting.
You know, so just because you're working outside of the hospital system, like, I mean, I know the hospital system gets described not very positively these days as soul-crushing. Probably many people could relate to that. But of course, that exists across the board, and it certainly was existing for me. But, you know, I was a single mom at the time. I had 2 young boys in school, and I wasn't really going to leave behind a stable, secure, fairly well-paying management job as a nurse. I mean, it was kind of a good gig, but I was miserable. And it was just the monotony of the job. It was what I felt didn't really have an impact, you know, KPIs and paperwork and chart audits and just some of the things that I was, you know, expected to do. So it was just really kind of soul crushing. And no surprise, I used to say, you know, that my time out of the office was when I really lit up, and because that was when I could be with clients and families and feel like I had more purpose, right, and more impact. But I didn't listen, like we said earlier, I didn't listen to that little voice. And that little voice was talking loud and clear to me. I remember getting off the elevator each day and actually praying that it would be a better day at the office that day. I mean, that's pretty bad when you have to do that, although maybe that's not unusual for people of faith to feel like they need to pray that their workday be better. And I remember clearly taking my coat off each day and saying to myself, am I going to do this job like for the rest of my career? Like, because at the time I would have been only like maybe 40, 45. And so I'm, you know, I probably still have a good 25 years in me. You know, I'm healthy and feeling good. So I'm thinking I probably could work a lot longer, but can I do this for 25 more years? But I just hung up my coat and just dove in and just sort of waded through each day. And I remembered it was not good. Like, I didn't feel good. It didn't feel good around me. It wasn't a healthy workplace. I didn't have anywhere else I could go, like higher up. And I just felt really kind of stuck. But again, I didn't listen, and I wasn't just going to jump ship. But then one day I was told to leave the ship. I was terminated. And so as much as I was devastated at the time, and it took a lot of time for me to come to this realization that it was exactly what I needed. Like, it was a gift that I was able to leave that workplace, because I probably wouldn't have left on my own, because there were a lot of things keeping me there, mostly like financial security, right? Like, could I have really searched for another job? Sure, I probably could have, but I just was kind of stuck, and I didn't listen to what that voice every day was telling every day. And I just didn't listen. So someone else got my attention, and literally, like, the rug was taken out from under me, and I was so angry and I was so mad. But now I see it as the gift that it was, and it was a blessing, and it was the best thing that ever happened. But that realization didn't come overnight. Like, I went through all the stages of grief loss and anger. There were some days I could see the light at the end of the tunnel, and there were other days when I was really sad and angry, and I wanted to go to work every day like everybody else. I felt really left out. I felt embarrassed, and I felt ashamed that I was fired from a job. Yeah, like it was a really rough go. And I just remember I was speaking with a friend, and she kind of reminded me of this idea that I'd had years ago that I'd shared with her. And she's like, Karen, like, didn't you always kind of want to do this sort of navigation thing? And I'm like, yeah. And I mean, I hadn't seen this girl for years. We used to work together years and years in the past. She was a social worker, and of course I'm a nurse. And she brought this up to me, and it was just like a spark. Like it was just like literally something lit inside of me, even though I was still going through all those emotions of anger and sadness and grief and loss about what had just happened. Yeah. And so once that, it was like, I don't know if you're like me, but like once I have an idea, it's like I'm, you know, kind of like a dog with a bone. It was like, oh, like all of a sudden I had something to focus on again, right?
Yeah.
So I was so thankful that I had seen her and reconnected, talk about connection and opportunity, because I was so maybe in my head and in my anger that I couldn't see past this opportunity that, yeah, that was my idea a lot of years ago. And so, I mean, I had to get I got a lot of help. Like I had counseling. I relied heavily on my husband, you know, for financial and emotional support for sure. My new husband, and just my friends, my family, like my mom and my dad. Yeah, like just having meaningful conversations with people, like starting down this road of entrepreneurship, and like, what does this look like, this idea that I have, can I make it a business? So like I was getting support from all angles to really kind of help me kind of grow this and stuff. So it was a long time coming, but I clearly remember it was a real shift for me. And I really feel like it was some kind of an awakening that had to happen in order to get me on this different path that I needed to be on. And so, yeah, it just started me on this path of not only my own work and my own independent practice as a consultant and a navigator, but just how I live my life even. And those, a lot of unhealthy practices that I had, like not listening to my intuition and not taking care of myself, and, you know, I was relying heavily on, I'm not ashamed to admit it, wine and Ativan to get through my week. Like, how bad is that? Like, it's just bad, right? It's not healthy. I didn't exercise. I probably wasn't eating as well as I should. I certainly probably wasn't hydrating myself as well. I wasn't practicing gratitude. I was just a lump of misery, Anna, like honestly, just kind of getting on, you know, just going through the motions. And it wasn't until years later, like after my termination, that I was doing a presentation on caregiver burnout. Back in the day when we did more live events, especially when my business was just launching, I used to do live events where I would, you know, snatch up a meeting room somewhere and have some snacks and invite some people and tell them what I was doing. And I was doing it on caregiver burnout, which is a real problem. And my focus is specifically family caregivers, not caregivers like paid caregivers like nurses and care workers, but my work is specifically with family members. And I just remember preparing for that presentation, and I was going through like all the things that would indicate someone was burned out. And I'm like, yep. That was me. That was me. And that was me. And I didn't even know it, that I was burned out when I was working and miserable, and that the day they came in to fire me, because I'd become an employee that probably wasn't a very good employee.
Right.
I mean, granted, it was an awful space, but I mean,
Yeah.
awful makes awful. Like when you work in an awful space, it's just awful. And so I wasn't a good employee, and a big part of my healing was forgiving myself for not being a good employee, for not being a good nurse, although I think I was still a good nurse. Just forgiving myself that I got fired, forgiving myself that I wasn't the best that I could have been in that position. That was huge. Like, I knew that I could never maybe forgive some of the things that had happened, some of the betrayals and bad things that happened in a workplace, bullying and stuff. But I knew I had to forgive myself. And as soon as I was able to identify that, it was like everything switched, just switched.
Right.
And so, I mean, many years in support and coaching and reading and learning and listening, and just being, like, kind of let me heal a little bit more. And so now that I could be who I can, maybe a better version of me for sure than I would have been back then. Yeah.
You've grown. So tell everyone what you do now. And I want to kind of backtrack. So that's one thing. I want you to tell everyone what you do now. And then also, for those people that have this idea that, they could say, well, I could never do something on my own. I wouldn't even know where to start. Maybe share a little bit about how you did start with not even having any sort of, business background necessarily, or maybe you did. So share with us what you do now. And then I'd love for you to share kind of that, like, what were your first steps when you went off on your own?
Well, now I work as I gave myself these titles. Like, I don't know if anybody else calls themselves such, but I gave myself the title Caregiving Consultant and Care Navigator, because it does encompass sort of the type of work that I do. When I first started out as a care navigator, my idea that my friend kind of reminded me of was more focused on the care navigation piece, where when people are supporting a family member who may be sick or unwell, they really don't know what would support them to take care of their family member. So I had this idea that I was going to connect there's the connection again, that I was going to connect everybody with supports and services and kind of lead them down the path of, this is what would be next best steps. This is what, in my professional opinion as a nurse, would best support you and your family. And because I'd been working in the community for 25 years, like, I kind of knew who the players were, right? Like, I knew how the systems worked. I knew, who the supports were that were out in the community. So that was kind of how it started. And there's definitely a need for that. And honestly, navigation is just exploding now. It's everywhere. There's so many people that do it. You wouldn't believe the number of messages that I get, people that message me and say, I want to do what you do. How do I do it? And I'm like, oh my God, like, how to, it's my journey, kind of like I just told you. You can't duplicate my journey. And then plus, like, how do I ever recite all that in a message? Like, I mean, and I mean, I love to mentor people. I love that role. But I mean, that takes a lot of time and energy too, right? So, sometimes I don't know always how to support people that are like, just yesterday I got a message, this girl wants to know, like, A to Z, like, how I did it. And it's like, so you kind of have, that kind of is where, your boundaries have to kind of come into play. It's like, how much of myself can I give to people? Because I need that energy for the other work that I do. Right. And that was huge for me, Anna, because I never really knew anything about boundaries before. So now I'm very careful, like, where I dedicate my time and my energy, because you can appreciate the work that I do. It requires a lot of listening and empathy.
Yes.
And that can be draining. So
Yes.
I have to be really cautious and careful and mindful of always filling up my stores so
Mhm.
that I can support people who come to me with some really difficult stories. So
Right.
I had the idea, it kind of morphed a little bit in the last couple of years to be a little bit more focused on the caregiving consultant portion, where I'm really working, like I really boiled it down to really supporting family caregivers.
Mhm.
Sometimes people will call me and they're like, oh, well, I hear you work with seniors. And it's like, well, sometimes some of my clients are senior and they're in a caregiving role.
Right.
And a lot of my work does support seniors because I'm supporting all the sons and daughters and spouses that
Sure.
are trying to look after everybody.
Sure.
So, it is there for sure. But I've really gotten more laser focused the last couple of years in the work that I'm doing very specifically to support family caregivers.
Mhm.
And I mean, I just remember starting out, like reaching out to any program that was out there.
Mm.
Like, you look for a lot of free stuff.
Yeah.
And like there were some things that I qualified for in my community. New Brunswick is hugely entrepreneurial and really supportive of small business.
Mm.
So there's all kinds of different initiatives that come and go. And sometimes that's a bit of a maze just to try to figure out like what I'm trying to do and who's out there that can support me to do it.
Yeah.
But I remember looking high and low and what's free and what can I afford to pay for? And
Mhm.
okay, who do I talk to? Like, do I need a website? And
Mhm.
I guess it's just sort of that, what we talked about earlier, you kind of have to be a bit bold and get uncomfortable. Like I didn't know anything about, like I wasn't even on Facebook till 2012. And I mean,
Right.
now I'm an admin on 5 pages.
Right.
I learned a lot from you for sure. But you kind of have to just be kind of bold and just kind of step up and ask. And people generally are helpful. I guess
Yeah.
that, so it's natural that I'm seeing the
Right.
people now coming
Right.
and asking me.
Right.
Because sort
Exactly.
of that hand up, right?
Yeah.
Not a handout, but a hand up.
Yeah.
So that's why I do like the mentorship role. I try to help as much as I can.
Right.
But yeah, it was just looking for different things that could support me in my business, like taking a course, like on social media, taking a course
Mhm.
on how to have an engaging group, taking
Mhm.
a course on, communication or listening or billing, or like some of the processes that you have to learn that we didn't learn that in nursing school.
Yeah.
Right?
No, exactly.
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay.
So
So
I'm
let's say I am a family caregiver. What would I do? How would I find you and hire you, and how does that work? I'm curious because out of my own curiosity how that actually
right.
works.
Yeah. Well, here locally, I mean, I live in a pretty small community in
Uh-huh.
Fredericton, New Brunswick, in Canada. And so a lot of my clients actually come to me through word of mouth.
Okay.
And I guess that's kind of the perks of living in a smaller community.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been really present in my community. Always engaged in my community. I don't take out billboards and advertising and all that crazy stuff. I just find that I believe that people find me that are supposed to find me.
Okay. Yeah.
And people, and I am always grateful for the clients that I've supported. And then I always say in my gratitude, I'm thankful for the ones that I'll meet in the future, right?
Yeah.
I don't advertise really per se. I just try to stay really consistent on social media. I try to be really open and honest on social media about who I am and what I've done and what I do. So some people I think do find me on Facebook. And I think some people find me on LinkedIn for sure, because those are the only 2 platforms that I kind of have the bandwidth to entertain.
Sure.
I don't know, like I know there's more. I know there's way more.
Yeah.
And I heard this girl the other day say, "Oh, you got to be on TikTok," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's just my own. It's
Sure.
like, trust me, it's you, if you know me at all, you know I'll do anything.
Yeah.
I'm not someone to just sit down and
Right.
shut up.
Right. Right.
But I just, it's more the bandwidth, like how much more
Yeah.
can I give,
Right.
and still do my work. So yeah, people Google me, people get me through word of mouth. People, I find, like, when you do that networking and connecting on different platforms,
Yeah.
it's great because, like, I've got people that do similar work to me or in similar spaces to me, and we've connected.
Mhm.
And so when they have a family member that lives in BC, they're like, Karen, do you know a navigator that works in or out of BC?
Mhm.
And I'm like, yeah, sure I do. So even
Right.
though they're not a paid client to me, like,
Right.
it's still, they'll remember you as someone who was
Yep.
able to point them in the
Referral.
right direction, which is a pretty good thing if you're a navigator.
Right.
And then they'll
Right.
remember that, right? But
Right.
I am always kind of surprised how people find me, but it's
Interesting.
usually they were given my name
Mhm.
from someone and someone.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then the other kind of interesting thing that I've learned about my clients is that, even though we're a small community in a small province in Canada, people that move away, they really remain connected to home.
Mhm.
And like me, I went away for a few years, but I came back,
Right.
and that's what a lot of people do. I think a lot of times we are drawn back to home, especially when our parents have become older and
Mhm.
and need support.
Mhm.
But yeah, like, I just find because they remain connected to home,
Yeah.
then their friends and family that are
Sure.
still here, they're like,
Sure.
oh, you got to talk to this girl, Karen.
Yes.
So I remember one day doing a virtual consultation just like this with a girl from LA
Mhm.
because her siblings and her mom and dad were all still back here. It's just
Right.
life took her to Los Angeles,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So
That makes
that's been a
complete
really
sense.
interesting thing, because some of my clients, especially in what I call my peace of mind program, they don't live here anymore,
Mhm.
but mom and dad do.
Right.
And they're awake at 2 a.m, in Toronto or British Columbia or wherever they reside now, and they're worried about what's going on with mom and dad back here
I
in
see. Yeah.
Fredericton.
Right.
So they actually engage my services to help support them and work with them together to make sure that mom and dad have everything they need here.
Mhm. I
So
see. That
yeah,
makes complete sense, and that clarifies a lot for me.
yeah,
So thank you. I just love the fact that you've taken an idea. Obviously, it didn't necessarily come to fruition the way you would have expected it to, because it was just an idea way back when, and you happened to share it with
yeah,
someone. And we all kind of do. We all kind of have these ideas that we share with our colleagues. And the fact that it came back to you and lit you up, and you took that and ran with it, and now you have this business that is, I'm sure, very fulfilling, because
yeah,
you are creating it the way that you want to create it. You've created your own titles. This is the way you want to do it. That, looking back at, all of the turmoil and the soul crushing, like, I was meant to go through that so that I could feel what I feel today. I'm guessing that is the truth. You tell me whether that is or not.
yeah. I get really reflective on Fridays, and
Yeah.
on my Facebook and LinkedIn, I'll often share like some kind of reflection. And I've been toying with this, this idea for a post. It's really just to say that I had to go through that to get to where I am today.
Right.
And yeah, like, it wasn't pretty, and I wouldn't want to go through it again.
Right.
But if I hadn't have gone through that, then I wouldn't be where I'm at today. Last week, I think it was last Friday, I had shared a picture. I've shared it before because I've been pretty open about my burnout, because caregivers relate to me because of that, because many of them are experiencing a slightly different kind of burnout. Mine was more a combination of being a caregiver, like in a formal role,
Mhm.
and an employee burnout. But I shared this picture. It was sort of a before and after. I don't know if you've seen it, but the before, like, to me, all I see in the picture is just like fatigue and
Right.
like distress and
Right.
like I see that. Now maybe
Right.
some people would look at it
Sure.
and say, hey, you look great.
Sure. Sure.
But
Sure.
when I look at that picture of myself from, I'll say like 2015, 2014, all I see is just like misery, and it brings
Mm,
back a lot of how I was
right.
feeling. And
Right.
then the picture on the right is a much more recent picture. And like to me, the difference is like night and day.
Mm.
But it wasn't easy. It wasn't just a flip of a
No.
switch. Like it wasn't
Yeah.
just like I left the job that was
Right.
soul crushing and then all of a sudden like I'm
Right. Right.
you
Right.
know, all happy roses and rainbows.
Yeah.
Wasn't like that.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
was a lot of work that had to happen
Sure.
in between there, and stuff that I still have to do
Sure.
today,
Sure.
like I said, to keep me feeling strong and receptive and open to be able to work with people. Because like I say,
Yeah.
when people are telling their story, and we all have a story, and I need to help them navigate that and overcome some of these challenges that they're facing, like I need to be like 110%.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I need to be really looking after myself. So when I talk about self-care, which I do all the time,
Mm-hmm.
this is why, is
Right.
because we need family members. Like we need family members. Like there's tens of millions of family members out there taking care of people.
Right.
And where would we be if they
Yeah.
weren't doing that?
Yeah.
Right.
No. Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
always saying to family members, like, we need you
Yeah.
to be strong. Like,
Yeah.
I need you to do this job.
Right.
Like, I know maybe some days you like to toss it out the window,
Yep.
but we need you to thrive and survive this, because there's
Right.
going to be life after this.
Right.
And like, you need to like be all in and taking care of yourself.
Yeah. I
It's
love
not some flippant thing about, you know, putting on a mud mask and a bubble bath. No, we're not talking about that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Although that stuff is nice. I like a good bubble bath too.
that. And I got to turn that down.
Right. But it's all like the little things. And
Yeah.
these are just the things that I had to learn.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing them before.
Right.
All like little simple things. And that's how I try to frame it up for people,
Mhm.
family caregiver or not, is that it's just little things, cumulative things, like things that add up, things that you can fit in your day.
Mhm.
We're not asking you to take a week off and go to a spa.
Right.
That ain't possible.
Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So all the things that help me are the things I try to share.
Right.
And some people are open to that and some people aren't, because like me, like all of us, we tend to want to go back to what's easy.
Yep.
And even whether it worked or not, we'll just
Right.
always revert back to what's comfortable and what's
Right.
easy.
Right.
So it takes a lot to do something different that you're not used to.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that story. I know that there are so many out there that can relate to, questioning where they're at in their own life, in their own career, and what we talked about purpose in the beginning and what their
Yeah.
purpose is. And maybe this gives people a little bit of hope that if they do feel like there is another purpose out there, then you're a perfect example of someone who's changed their trajectory and put themselves on a path of purpose. And maybe there are people out there that don't necessarily think they have a purpose, but now are questioning maybe they do have a purpose, which I think I love that piece the most, is that just that little spark of like, curiosity. Maybe I do have a purpose. So I love the fact that we've had this conversation for those reasons and more, obviously. So where can people find you on social media? And if they have, questions about, what they're going through, maybe they can relate or wanted to know more about what exactly you do, where can they find you?
Mm-hmm. I have a website. It's really easy. It's
Okay.
www.karenlake.ca. I changed it a couple of years ago, like during the first year of COVID, I rebranded a little bit and came out from behind a really pretty logo and a really different business name. And I just stepped into myself because it was what it was. Like, this is me.
Yeah.
When people say you need to talk to Karen, like they weren't saying, call, it used to be called Health at Home. They never said that. They said, you got to get in touch with Karen. So I kind of rebranded. I kind of stepped out from behind the logo and kind of stepped into my name. It is what it is. So it's just www.karenlake.ca.
Okay.
And I am on Facebook, and you could search Karen Lake Caregiving Consultant and Care Navigator. I am on LinkedIn. The URL or the address is at Karen Lake Cares.
Okay.
So
I'll put them in the show notes as well.
So yeah, it's the same on LinkedIn as it is on Facebook. Very
easily.
And I do have a beautiful group for anybody who might be a family member who's supporting and caring for a family member. And we welcome all different kinds of people too. There definitely has to be a caregiving role. I always say the group is carefully curated. We don't just let anybody in, but it's because I want to keep it, clean. I want to keep it like that everyone there is in a caregiving role. So even if you're like me and you're just sort of starting because you see your parents starting to get older and their health may be failing, and you just want to learn, you want to kind of lean in, you want to kind of listen, like what can I expect? We welcome those people. And then also at the other end, we have a lot of people in the group who their caregiving journeys are done. And they still may have questions, they may still be grieving, and they like being in a community so they don't feel like they're alone. It's a cool place to hang out too. And they have a lot to share. Like they have a lot to share. Most people don't identify with the role of caregiver. It's not really something people want to say that they do. So that's why I kind of tend to say like anyone that cares and supports a family member, because you may live far away from your mom and dad, but you still provide some kind of care and support to them. So yeah.
Love that. Okay, awesome. And yes, your community is amazing. So I will make sure and put all of those links in the show notes. And I appreciate you sharing your story and your journey and all of those things. I appreciate you as a friend. One of these days we will meet in person in my traveling, wherever I end up. It will happen. It will happen.
Yeah, I believe it will.
Right. Okay. And if you are watching this on YouTube, then please click subscribe. And if you're listening to this on any of the podcast platforms, please click subscribe and write a review. I would really appreciate it. And I appreciate everyone listening and the feedback I've gotten on this podcast, just because of people like Karen sharing their stories. And I really, really am grateful for the opportunity to share that with you guys. So thank you. And thank you, Karen, so much for being on here.
Thank you, Anna.